Hilary joins us now. Hilary, welcome to the show. This morning you sent me a message from the police to do with the 105 non-emergency number. We talked about this last week and how the police were only answering 17% of the 105 messages that they received. And you've sent me a text. Can you give me the context for that?
The context was that the Tenancy Tribunal had made a rule, put a suppression order in for the name of a tenant in their proceedings.
Right.
And so the tenancy order said we grant a suppression of the name of the tenant,
Yep.
and went on to say what else the order said. And at the bottom of the order, it said something like, and the landlord will pay the tenant, Michael Laws, the sum of X amount.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
they had breached their own suppression order. And so
the Tenancy Tribunal had.
Yeah, well, the Ministry of Justice had.
Right.
And so what happens is if an alleged breach of a suppression order, the Ministry of Justice is involved, and they refer it on to the police. In this case, it is the Ministry of Justice who has breached the suppression order.
Oh, how ridiculous.
So what you've been sent this morning is something from the New Zealand Police saying, we have just processed your online report in regards to the suppression order breach. Unfortunately, this matter is civil and is not something for the police. Now,
You'll need to seek legal advice. That's absurd. It's a breach of the Tenancy Tribunal. It's not a criminal, but it's an offence. Yeah.
It is. It's not a civil matter at all.
No.
And the police, if anybody should know what a civil matter looks like and what a police matter looks like, it should be the police. And they do understand suppression orders because they're administering them all over the place, and they're rejecting them or asking, putting submissions in about them and whatever. And for them to suggest that a breach of a suppression order is civil is breathtakingly improper.
Yes.
Of course they can. Stupid. Police can. Yes, they can look at something and say, overall, this is not a big issue, and they don't have to chase after every bus that goes by. But they weren't saying, I'm not chasing after the bus. They were saying, this is a civil matter.
Yes.
And you'd think that if the police can't even tell
the difference between a civil and a non-civil matter, yes, really. Absolutely.
So it was really just in light of your love of the New Zealand Police Force that I thought that was an interesting further thing. And I can understand them not having time to do some things, but that's just beyond. So don't bother complaining to the police about a suppression order, certainly not if it's the Ministry of Justice, because they have to refer it, and they're not about to refer anything that says that they themselves have breached it. So they're the only people who might be allowed to breach it. And then it's civil, because it's between you and the Ministry of Justice.
Yeah, it's madness. In actual fact, the Residential Tenancies Act of 1986 has a section related to suppression orders, section 95A if you ever need it. So clearly it is a legislative prescription, not a civil prescription. It gives the tribunal the right to have suppression orders, and the breach of them is an offence against the Act. So, yeah, you're right. If the police don't know that, then what do they know?
Yeah, there's a reason why they're allowed to, of course, too, because tenants, if their name was known, could be pilloried or put on a list of things that the landlords don't like or whatever. And if that's a breach of natural justice, or what you would say in a different venue. So there's a reason why it's an appropriate thing for them to do. But the ministry just need to say, oops, drop the ball, that was a mistake, and apologise to the tenant. And the police need to treat it as a proper thing to make a complaint. If they write off every complaint because, it's just civil, it's sort of like it's only a domestic.
Well, yeah, but
And
I'll give another
speaking of
good example of
domestic,
that, though.
Michael,
Here's another good example of the police failing to act on a breach of the law, and it's to do with the late filing of expenses from Te Pāti Māori. Now, it's an offence against the Electoral Act, all right? You're meant to file within time. They still haven't. Your expenses related to elections. And what did the police do? They didn't prosecute them. They gave them a warning. And they then walked away from the issue.
yes, well, what they seem to have done is said you must file these, and they've said, oh, yeah, they're with the auditor, we'll get round to it. And John Tamahiri made that particularly stupid comment saying, you're just picking on us brown native boys, we always follow the letter of the law, which it was so patently stupid that it's hard to know where to start. But the police then, having told them that they're not allowed to leave those over, which they had done, they then said, we have closed the file. Nothing to see here.
Isn't that extraordinary?
Goodness me, you wonder whether they've got any files left on their desk.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Can I just tell you, you won't know this, but a new poll has just been released. So this is a flash. New Taxpayer Union Courier poll. So it's just been released this morning. I don't think it's been covered by media. And also, this is the first time you'll hear it on the platform. The news keeps getting worse for the government. The centre-left bloc has increased its lead. Labour, the Greens and Te Pāti Māori could form a government now. Nationals up 1.7%, but Labour's up 2.8%. The Greens are down, but ACT's also down. New Zealand First are down. Te Pāti Māori is up, in fact, up to 6.5%, which would give the centre-left 62 seats in Parliament and the centre-right 58. That's bad enough, you might think. The shocking news is that Chris Hipkins has overtaken Christopher Luxon as New Zealand's preferred Prime Minister. Repeat that.
And
Chris Hipkins has overtaken Christopher Luxon as New Zealand's preferred Prime Minister.
Yeah, and he's done a very good job recently, Chris Hipkins, and why I think what's behind that partly is that people aren't totally happy with what's happening at the moment, and the economy's still crap and a few other things. But also, Chris Hipkins is taking the very smart stand of not having any policies whatsoever. He's saying he won't change some of the current policies, but the policies that got them thrown out at the last election, or the position, he's not got any at the moment. And so you can't disagree with them, and you can't say, oh, well, what they would do is bring in Three Waters or whatever, because he's not saying he will. You can't say they wouldn't have a Maori Health Authority because he's not saying he will. They're not saying that whatever people voted against last time, he's just not saying what he might do with those things. And so it would be much more interesting.
I tend to go slightly different than you, can I just say, in July 2024, and you won't have that immediately to hand, I have, Chris Hipkins was at 35% on that preferred Prime Minister, same polling. Okay, so this is less than a year ago, July 2024. Now he's at 20%. Now, he's gone from crash from 35 to 20% as preferred Prime Minister since July of last year, which is what, 9 months ago? 8 months ago. The reality is that he is the liability, I would suggest to you. He is the foot nailed to the floor for the centre-right coalition in this country, isn't he?
Yeah, I think the Nats must be having a serious little think about what on there, because what they're doing is not things that people disapprove of on the whole, I think. I don't think, and in fact, even Chris Hipkins says, oh yeah, I'd do those myself with a few of them, if he mentions anything. So I think it's something for the Nats to deal with, really. and they best get on with it if they're going to, because they don't want to be doing anything too late in the piece if they're going to. And he's had every opportunity to be the sort of leader needed, and I'm not sure whether that's possible or whether whatever. And I'm not, from my personal point of view, and I've got no idea what other people think politically, is that he's just not quite, he doesn't quite know how to do the thing that isn't running a, it's not that New Zealand isn't a business or anything, but he's sort of, in some weird way, not a politician.